Hi, my name is Steven and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking to you about Life Lessons Learned Part 10, Tips on Finding an Apartment. So these episodes are about the lessons I've learned along the journey of my life. This series will cover different aspects of my life now that I'm older, wiser, and can look back and see where I could have done better. Its primary purpose is to give others a guide on how to do things better to skip over some of my mistakes. So recently I moved to a 2-bedroom apartment with my wife. This is my first major move in over 5 years. Prior to that, I never stayed in one apartment for more than 2 years. After all of that, apartment hunting is never as straightforward or easy as you expect it to be. And there's definitely no such thing as the perfect apartment for you. Most of the time, it's just based on what your priority and what your needs are at the time. And you gauge whether or not this apartment space will work for you in the short term. And ultimately, at the end of the day, what you can learn to live with in your new apartment. So here are some of the things that I look out for when I'm searching for a new apartment. And these tips might make your apartment search a little bit easier. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about my background, my lessons learned, and my general thoughts. And before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, share with your friends, hit that notification bell if you like this content. And here we go. So apartment hunting, just like house hunting, is an art form in and of itself. Competition can be fierce sometimes, and we're all looking for a good deal. The reason why we decided to move into a bigger place is because of a growing family. And we knew what we wanted going into this search. We had a baseline for our priorities. The basic thing that we were looking for in this apartment was 2 beds and maybe perhaps 2 bathrooms. But even with this narrow search criteria, it ultimately took us a couple of months to find the right apartment for us. And we knew what we want going into the search. If you're uncertain of what you want exactly from your apartment, it's going to take longer. And it's ultimately going to be harder for you to find the place that you really want to live in. In my younger days, I didn't really care what my apartment had. I just wanted to be close to work and school. But as I grew more experienced in apartment searching, I had a certain set of criteria that I wanted to hit each and every time I moved into a new place. I realized that there was a big benefit being next to supermarkets, freeways, and doctors. Logistically speaking, it made a good apartment a great apartment in the end. And sometimes when you're picking an apartment community, the cheapest deal in a great place might not be worth it in the end. Because you never know what the downsides will be until you lock yourself in a 1-year lease. And the more and more I moved to various apartments, I realized that you can adapt to any apartment given enough time. That means minor annoyances and issues will resolve itself eventually just by you ignoring them. So here are my lessons learned on tips on finding an apartment. Number 1, location, location, location. Always move to a place where you have the location and logistics in mind. This usually means being close to supermarkets, freeways, and your place of work. The closer you are to the places that you regularly visit, the more time you will save in the end. Also put a priority living next to transit hubs or large freeways. That means in large cities you can quickly move around to wherever you want to go to. Back in Los Angeles, I used to live in the suburbs and it would take me 40 minutes to get to anywhere that I want to be. And that's not even accounting for traffic. If I hit traffic, I would be stuck for an hour. And all those places had to be driven there by a car. There's no other way to get around that. And also I would do my research before I wanted to live in that area for a year or more. That means driving around the community and visiting the local parks and seeing what the atmosphere is like. I would not ever, sight unseen, get myself an apartment in a place I don't know. And another thing to consider is that if you're hosting a lot and you want your friends over, pick an apartment that has a lot of parking spaces. Because if you live in a downtown area, you'll be very limited on how many people can come visit you. So when you're looking for a place to live, location matters. Pick the best place that you can possibly afford that's located next to everything you want to ever go to. Number 2, nice views. Are they worth it? So within the apartment community itself, pay attention to what unit you pick within the community. Units on high floors might have beautiful views, but they pose logistical problems. And over the term of your lease, they can contribute to a massive time sink in just you walking back and forth to your apartment. Because to have a nice view, you're usually far away from the garage or the entrance of that apartment. If there's a single elevator or just a staircase, you might spend a lot of time going back and forth. And this can be a real challenge moving stuff back and forth, such as luggage or groceries. My go-to apartments nowadays are always ground floor units with easy in and out. This means that I can get outside much quicker so I can get to my car faster and walk the dog easier. The other thing about units with beautiful views is that you eventually get used to them and they fade into the background. You'll get to a point where you're not even looking out at the window anymore, you're just focusing on what's inside the apartment. But you're still on the hook for paying for that view every single month of your lease. The novelty of that view will eventually fade, even if you don't want it to. So be sure if you really want that apartment with a beautiful view that you're willing to put up with the logistics of it and also pay a premium for it. Number 3, short-term needs. Something to keep in mind when you're finding an apartment is, does it serve your immediate near-term needs? Meaning, what do you need from an apartment right now? A single bedroom or a multiple bedroom unit? This is important because if we pick a bigger place that we don't necessarily need, we might end up wasting a lot of money in the end. Because no matter what we choose, we'll always fill that place with stuff. And the smaller the place, the less stuff you'll naturally accumulate. And because of the temporary nature of apartments, you don't want to move stuff back and forth to new apartments each and every time. So keep only what you need in an apartment for the near term. When I was in my move to a new place every 2-year phase, I didn't have a lot of stuff to carry around with me. I knew that the location was temporary in nature and I didn't want to spend a lot of money on fancy furniture. I got stuff that if it got dinged really badly, I wouldn't care too much about it. Although as I've gotten older, I've stayed longer and longer in my apartment, so I'm now naturally switching to more long-term needs. And I'm more careful about the places I choose because I want to live there for multiple years. Life can change really quickly, and the things that you might need today might not be the same things that you need for tomorrow. Keep that in mind when you're searching for an apartment that you know it's going to be temporary. Does it suit your immediate need or does it not? Number 4, you get what you pay for. At the end of the day, when you're looking for apartments, there are great deals to be had, but it is rare nowadays. With the fierce competition and more people looking into rental units, it's harder and harder to find that great deal. Especially in a place like Seattle, you really get what you pay for. Sometimes you might find a really cheap apartment, but then you find out later that it's not a great deal in the end. Cheap places might have severe deficits that you might not see until you actually live there for a couple of months. By then, it's too late. And you might ultimately pay for that cheap apartment in other ways, like your health or resolving a rodent issue. If a unit is over or underpriced, there might be a good reason for that. Don't eliminate the expensive option right away. At least not until you dig into the details of why it's that price in the first place. For a while, I lived in downtown Seattle and I thought it was a great location to live at. I thought it was a great location because it was close by all the activities that I wanted to go to. It had a location to die for, enclosed parking, and a great view. But after a few months of living there, I realized what did I pay for and what it cost me in the end. The washer and dryer in the laundry room kept breaking down, so I couldn't get my clothes cleaned. My car was broken into in the closed parking structure. And also, there was a severe mold issue I didn't realize until a couple of months in, which made me sick. For the 2 years that I was staying there, the property manager didn't resolve any of those problems. It was a great deal to live in that area, but it was a complete mess inside living there. The place that I'm living now is far more expensive for a 2-bedroom in this area, because the apartment that we're currently in only has 2 stories and we have wide open spaces everywhere. And the neighborhood is a lot safer and there's plenty of parking for everyone. So never judge a book by its cover. Cheap places might have hidden downsides. And vice versa, expensive places might have hidden benefits as well. And lastly, it will never be perfect. Lastly, wherever you live, there will be no such thing as a perfect apartment. But know that eventually you'll get used to it and you'll normalize you living there. Minor issues in the apartment will eventually fade into the background and you won't realize they're there anymore. And over time, it will be less and less a big deal to us. This was the biggest apartment hack that I used to find a place that wasn't perfect. I always thought to myself, 6 months down the line, will this bother me or will it not bother me? And if it did bother me and I couldn't resolve it with the property manager, then I wouldn't pick that place. The trick is to make a list of things that you have to have in your apartment and that will annoy you if it doesn't get resolved. And carry that list to each and every apartment that you go to make sure that you have all the things that you need. If you see an issue and it can't be resolved, move on. But otherwise, can you deal with this issue in the short term and over time, will it just dissolve into the background? So know that there's no such thing as a perfect apartment. Prioritize the things that are must-haves and ignore the rest over time. So here are my general thoughts on apartment searching. I didn't go into a lot of discussion about picking an apartment based on cost alone. I've been lucky enough to pay for all of my apartments on my salary alone. The one time that I did split a 2-bedroom apartment with a roommate, I had to pay a lot of fees for breaking the lease. We had recently re-signed our lease, but then I got a job offer and I had to move to Seattle. That was 2 months rent for that particular apartment that I had to break. So the lesson I've learned is that regardless if you have a roommate or not, be sure that you can move into a place that you can pay for the full balance of that apartment. This is because if you're ever in a situation where your roommate can't pay or you need to break the lease, you need to have money available to pay for it. And having that cash cushion is really important for you to maintain your standard of living. And generally, I like to live minimalistically, especially in my apartment days. Eventually, when we move to a house, we'll get more stuff, but for now, I want to live as minimalistically as possible. This not only makes our footprint smaller, but it decreases the amount of lugging back and forth all of our furniture. It also means that you can potentially live in a smaller area because you don't have all the stuff that you need to get rid of right away. That means if you have financial hardship, moving into a small place might not be such a big deal. Only when you think you're financially stable and can afford it, then I suggest you get some more stuff. So those are my lessons learned on searching for a new apartment. Finding an apartment is never easy due to a combination of factors that we're looking for when we search for a new place. And because we're spending so much time in our living space, we want to be comfortable and we want to make the right decision. After so many apartment changes in my life, I finally found an optimum set of things that I look for when I'm searching for a new place. It is a balance between functionality, comfort, and location. Cost is also an issue, but like I've mentioned before, there can be pros and cons to choosing a cheap place or a very expensive place. So ultimately, by keeping a few things in mind, you'll find a place that works for you. So here are the main lessons learned. Location, location, location. You never get what you pay for, and it's never going to be perfect. I hope you're able to take a few lessons learned away from this video in your own apartment search. So thank you for watching. Please leave me a comment down below on what you look for in an apartment and why does it matter to you. And I'll see you next time.